In April, all eyes were on Ottawa as Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, Jody Wilson-Raybould, along with Dr. Jane Philpott, were removed from the Liberal caucus. This after the Prime Minister stated that there was an erosion of trust after Wilson-Raybould released a phone conversation with the Privy Council clerk, Michael Warnick. It backed up her claims that she was pressured to interfere on the prosecution of SNC-Lavalin in an ongoing criminal case. But by year's end, Jody Wilson-Raybould, who decided to run as an independent, was victorious and won in the Vancouver-Granville riding, making her the only independent candidate to win across the country.
We accomplished together something extraordinary. We accomplished showing Ottawa, showing our political process that independent, strong voices matter and that we can do politics differently.
And just recently, SNC-Lavalin pled guilty to a single charge of fraud and agreed to a $280 million fine. Ironically, it was on the same day that the Canadian Press named Jody Wilson-Raybould Newsmaker of the Year. Salmon stocks are down in nearly every river in BC, and some are saying that they are on the brink of extinction. In some cases, there wasn't any fish at all this year. In late June, a massive landslide was discovered along the Fraser River where migrating salmon were returning. The slide made it impassable. The BC government stepped in with numerous initiatives to help, including bringing in rock scalers.
All right, let's go save some salmon.
Salmon were also scooped up by hand and removed by helicopter past the debris. However, just recently, the Chilcotin Nation declared a state of emergency after the Big Bar landslide created long-term and dire consequences for the Chinook and sockeye fish. Fisherman like Mike Sparrow isn't just worried about the salmon at Big Bar. He's concerned about the entire salmon industry across the province.
The salmon don't have a clear path right now, out or back in. They go through the gauntlet of fish farms leaving, and they're exposed to parasites and also viruses. And on the way back in, they're running through a gauntlet of sport fishing lines.
In 2017, bloody effluent was discovered to be flowing into the ocean from discarded Atlantic farmed salmon that were being processed at a plant on Vancouver Island. It was tested and it came back positive for the pristine Rio virus. Despite an uproar from environmentalists and the provincial and federal governments, it's been recently discovered that the bloody effluent is still being pumped into the ocean 2 years later, with migrating wild salmon nearby. It's also tested once again positive for PRV. The virus is linked to organ failure of salmon. "2019 was once again a deadly year on the main streets of Vancouver's downtown east side.
There's no such thing as heroin anymore. You know, heroin's heroin. You know, someone ruined the whole heroin gig and just started bringing out this fentanyl shit, and it's done nothing but kill people and, you know, kill a lot of kids.
The crisis has spurred the Chief Medical Health Officer of BC to recommend an unconventional solution.
I'm recommending a regulated legal supply of drugs to replace the toxic illegal supply, not only here in our region, but elsewhere in Canada where overdoses are occurring.
Say a prayer that we find justice.
The issue of murdered and missing women is still ongoing, despite numerous rallies and protests, including Indigenous women riding motorcycles across North America, raising awareness of MMIWG. In 2019, the National Inquiry into MMIWG wrapped up with the conclusion that there is a genocide of Indigenous women and girls in Canada.
This public outing of the fact that Indigenous people across Turtle Island are in fact targeted by the genocide comes as no surprise to Indigenous communities.
And shortly after the final report was released, the Prime Minister was asked about that finding. Do you believe that it was genocide, Mr. Prime Minister?
I think one of the challenges we face right now is a lot of people are engaging in debate over words. As I've said, we accept the findings of the commissioners that it was genocide. But our focus is going to be, as it must be, on the families, on the communities that have suffered such loss.
And rounding out one of the biggest stories in 2019 was the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People becoming law in BC.
It is an enormous privilege on this historic day to grant royal assent to Bill 41, thereby enshrining the human rights of Indigenous people in law.
BC is the first province in the world to make UNDRIP law.
Where there was a clash between Crown and Aboriginal title, that will mean now, I believe, a bond between a true government to government, not just an agreement, but a true partnership, a collaboration between governing systems, one that's been here for thousands of years and one that's been here just over 100 years.
Tansei, on behalf of everybody at APTN National News' BC Bureau, we want to wish you a very happy holidays. I'm Tina House, and thanks for tuning in.